Good morning, Linda. Thank you for joining me on Not Nosy, Just Curious podcast. And you are very accomplished, but my curiosity is your campaign with intuition. Do you think we're born with it? Do you think we just don't pay attention to it? You think we can cultivate it?
I do. I teach people how to do this. And for myself, I wasn't born just a super intuitive person. I had moments, but certainly not disciplined with it, didn't know how to activate it on command, to be able to use it like any other facility that we have, faculty that we have, internally, like reading or writing or something like that we learn how to do. But I think we all have the capacity to do it. And the reason I say that is simply because I teach people to do it, and they do get better with the exercises that I teach them. I think that we're born with the ability, but most of us just lean toward those Western educational modes where logic and reasoning kicks in. And then it's kind of institutionalized out of us because there's been a large campaign, literally, to make sure that we don't use our intuition very much. It's reliable for me because I know how to trust it, and I know when to really use my logical mind along with it. But for a lot of people, if they're just going on that gut feeling, that gut instinct, it might lead them in the wrong direction or something. So I think we've been taught not to do that. You really have to use it in conjunction with your own logic and reasoning. Don't jump over a cliff just because your intuition tells you to do so, in other words. So there can be risk involved in both sides. But what I have found is if you can hone in on it and learn it to a deep degree and know your accuracy rate with it, then you can trust it quite a bit.
Would you consider it a seventh sense if you could hone in? Because you created this SPI thing for people to learn. I mean, so often in hindsight, what I'm trying to say, Linda, in hindsight, we always go, I had a feeling. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. And the difference between what I've done and just that feeling is taking that into some dialogue where what does that feeling mean? What is that trying to tell me? Is it, and being able to really accurately assess that feeling. That's a deep understanding of what your body understanding is. I think to call it a sixth sense, I think that's okay to call it that. It is probably that, but I think it's deeper than that as well. Every cell of your body is responding every moment of every second you are alive to all of these elements around you. So it's taking in information. So your body actually knows more than your brain knows, more than your mind knows, because it has more information to grasp. We can only focus mentally on one small portion of life at a time. So most of it just goes by us, but our body's constantly responding to that, even if we're not paying attention to it. And this is true with intuition. I think it's constantly trying to communicate with us, but we're not paying attention to it because we're focused over here on the job we're doing or exercise that we're incorporated in or planning and paying the bills, whatever it is that we're focused on. It's usually not the intuitive side of our awareness at that time, but your body is actually what is going to talk to you. So it's a type of sixth sense, but it's really paying attention to that overall body sensation that is always communicating.
That's so interesting that we are such a, like you're saying, over a body of communication and we don't utilize any of it.
Not much. I mean, if you get really, really hot, you might turn the air down. I mean, that's a body communication. If something doesn't taste good to us, we stop eating it. So that's body communication. All of those things we're doing all the time. It's just to take that into a way that you can perceive something that's outside of the range of your five senses in that moment.
Can intuition enhance your success?
Well, I can give you a couple of stories where it's really made a difference in my life. I'm a real estate investor and have been since the 80s. So it's been a long time process of understanding how much this can assist me. For one thing, I learned I didn't always have this. So I invested for some years without having this particular skill honed in as accurately as I do today. But it went well for us. It was good. It went well for us. But I can say that once I was able to do this at will, I could just go in and I would just say, okay, where's the best investment in the city today? And I would just get a sense or an area And then I start looking up. This is where logic and reasoning goes all hand in hand with intuition. I get a sense of where to look. And then I look through multi-list or whatever was available for sale by owner or whatever. Just look on the internet and see, well, what's available there? Then I'd go look at that and it's like, you're right. This is absolutely 100% the best value property in town. The thing is, those things are going to go quickly because investors are always looking for those deals. If it's something that's been on the market a day, it very likely can be gone. So it's something you have to be on top of those things all the time. So that's one way that I've used it in my business. Another way that it's come in very, very handy was once upon a time, this was back in the early 90s or so. My husband and I had been in real estate for quite a while, but we weren't wealthy. You know, we had a lot of properties at that point, but you know, we couldn't just go out and pay cash for an expensive house at that time. So we went to look at a 222.22 acre ranch. This house it wasn't very old. The house wasn't very old. It was a 3-story, 8,000 square foot home, had a large, beautiful pool in the back. It had wonderful, huge barns for these horses. And it was just a really well-maintained, beautiful setting, had a paved driveway up to the house lined with trees. It was just picturesque. It was absolutely beautiful. But this was going to auction. And I believe it was a divorce situation or something where they had to auction the house to move it. We knew the house had sold a couple of times before for close to $1 million. And frankly, we didn't have $1 million sitting around to pay for it in 3 weeks when you have to have that money at an auction. You have to get the money now. So it's not something that you have the luxury of time. And you can't back out of it. I mean, it's a really solid deal. But we went to look at it knowing it was out of our price range. You know, we thought, well, we'll just, take a look. Who knows? And we're driving around the property. And this was 3 weeks before the auction was going to happen. And I get this intuitive impression. It's a very strong one that said, this is going to sell for $300,000. And I just blurted it out. And my husband said, well, if it sells for $300,000, we need to buy it because that would be an extremely good price on this property. So because I got that information, you see, we went to the bank. We became qualified for the loan on this in case we did get the bid at the auction. We didn't even have the money for the down payment, however. So it was so odd, but that week, 2 people called us wanting to buy smaller little properties that we had. They wanted to pay cash and close them that week. And that gave us the down payment that we needed. So we show up to the auction. And it was so crowded. This was a farming community. And so all the people were curious. Not very many buyers, but a lot of people were very curious what this place was going to sell for. And also, it was a show place. So because it was a show place, everybody kind of wanted to see. The curiosity really got to everyone. But a few people showed up that were really serious and wanting to bid. So the bidding started. It ended up, we had the bid at $300,000. Shortly after that, the auctioneer said sold, and we bought that house for $300,000, exactly as I had heard intuitively. So this was the value of having developed my intuition to the point where it wasn't just a feeling, it was absolute 100% accurate information that then guided us to go ahead and purchase that property.
That's an amazing story, Linda. But as you're telling, it's just earth-shattering, but is that kind of like gambling?
I wouldn't call it gambling. I would just call it farsight. It's one of those things that we can view things outside of our range of conscious knowledge. Now, I didn't know the circumstance of the person who was selling it, but obviously they could sell it for $300,000 because they did. And I didn't know that low amount would actually buy it. So it was one of those moments that, that I just trusted that. And we didn't really gamble anything because we didn't have to buy the property. If it sold for more than $300,000, we had been out no money other than just the small application fee at the bank to apply for the loan. So we hadn't been out any money to do this. So we just prepared ourselves. My intuition just allowed me to have this information so I could move forward with the preparation to actually buy it.
Right. Okay. So I'm looking at it but there was no risk because your intuition was that solid. You were that firm in this. You knew. You just knew.
Yeah, there was no risk because we knew the value of the property, and by buying it, we knew we had the value there, and so there was no risk to us because we were real estate investors already. So we knew how to move the property, and we did sell the property for considerably more than what we paid for it. So there was no real risk to us. It was only an advantage to us.
So, what then moves you into writing books and making films? What takes you to that level?
Well, I'm a creative person at heart. Now, I love real estate. I love the product. I love that. I love housing, and I'm still in that. I'm still doing real estate investing today. I just have rentals today, so it's not something that I'm flipping houses or buying and selling like we did back in the early days. But so that's kind of my bread and butter. It allows me to have a lot of free time. But I'm a really creative person, and also I'm a curious person, and also I love to see people be successful. So to be kind of a coach, to be able to help people, to guide them into being able to hone in on their own intuition, but also to help them see the things that are out there, that opportunities that they may miss. I just read something in the paper the other day about they did kind of an experiment with people who are kind of narrow and pessimistic and don't really see optimism very much, and people who considered themselves to be lucky and optimistic. And they put that the assignment was to find X number of photos, like 43, find how many photos were in the newspaper. Okay, so was going to go through and count these photos in the newspaper to give an accurate account. Well, the people who were more lucky, optimistic, and aware saw right there on the very front page of that newspaper, it said, "Stop looking for the pictures. There are 48 pictures in this paper." But right there on the front of the paper. So they stopped. They could see it. They could actually see that. The other people are kind of disgruntled, pessimistic, didn't think they'd find all the pictures, didn't see that at all. They just started looking for the pictures, and then an hour or two later, they have come up with X number of pictures. But the difference is the way your mind is focused in, what you are focused in on. By becoming more intuitive, and I teach the SPY technique, which is my book, Spy Your Way to Power and Success, which stands for Superpowered Intuition. If you can hone in on the most positive opportunities out there, you will actually see them. If you don't, if you think you're unlucky and everything's down on you and everything's going to go wrong and everybody's, against you and you got a chip on your shoulder, you don't even see those opportunities. They're sitting there just like that headline in the newspaper. It's right there in front of you, but you can't see it. So a large part of this is just retraining our brain to be able to be perceptive about things that we normally just miss.
So do you think you can swing a very negative person into a positive person? Do you think you can change that mindset? I mean,
I think that's up to them. I'm not one to just, demand, but if somebody's wanting to have a positive outlook, they can certainly change that. Our attention is one of the few things in life we do have the ability to move. And I demonstrate in my classes that, looking at one object in the room and then switch your attention to another object in the room. It's just as easy to see a positive outcome and see an opportunity in front of you and act on it. Most of the time it's taking the risk to act upon it's what they don't do. That as it is to see something in a very pessimistic way and see it won't turn out well at all. But that really does have a big bearing upon how your life turns out. So a large part of my teaching is having the life you want, but you have to actually realize that you have some power over that. So empowering the human being is very important in my teachings.
Is it comparable to manifesting?
I call it manifesting. It's a manifesting type of course. I think I spent a few years of my adult life not seeing those things. And then, as time progressed, I realized that, life was really more in my hands than I realized. It wasn't just all fated. And I began to just see and have that positive outlook. I also got married to someone that saw those positive things with me. And that helps a lot too, when you have that a support system around you that's also being very positive.
Very true, very, very true. But sometimes I'm in a situation where you're happy and you're having fun. Then there's that one person, that one dark cloud that enters, and that dark cloud will consume the happiness for some reason. Why is that?
Well, I think we become entrained with one another. In other words, that, and we just is shown that if you look at each other in the eye, your heart rate starts beating at the same pace. I think that same is true with our emotions. We can often have one negative person could just bring the whole group down. I think it's really important to be around people that support you and that you support them. Once you're around positive individuals and people who are, making a difference in their world, it helps you make a difference in yours. As I teach this in intuitive state, oftentimes people will say, "Oh, I can't do that." I mean, I hear that over and over again. Well, that's just not me. I just can't do that. And so they'll fail a few times and then they say they can't, But if I give them that undivided one-on-one attention and work through the process with them to be able to see something or know something, because they become entrained with my ability to do this, because I've done it for such a long time now and I have such a strong dialogue with it, by guiding them through it, they become entrained with how I do it and the positive outcome, and it works for them. And once they begin to see how it works for them, it's much easier to recreate that then. So I think as you have positive success rates with whatever it is you're trying to create in life, it really makes a difference in how you manifest the next level of your creation.
Do you think, Linda, that when you hear that I can't, I read somewhere that I can't kind of translates simply into I won't?
It does. Yeah. It's also a good buffer between you and the fear of doing so. If you became intuitive, how would your life change? If I had never known that property was going to sell for $300,000, I could make every excuse in the world for not following through and buying it. But since I did know it, I didn't have any excuse. And then how many times do you hear people say, "Well, I knew that, but I didn't act on it," and then they regret it later. But because they didn't trust it or they didn't move forward with something, it gives them an out, but it also is an excuse, I think. I think all of us can be empowered and have different lives. I mean, there are limits, to what we might be capable of doing. I don't think I'm going to be an astrophysicist, at this point in time in my life, especially. But, there are things we have inklings toward and things we're going to have successes with. I've been very successful with the businesses I have started, but I do understand in the few times I started small retail, that wasn't my cup of tea. I don't like small products. I don't like small change things to do. I like houses. They're big. They're big, the profit's high, and I could move forward with that and feel really good about those. But I don't like selling something I make 2 cents on, and then you have to repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. That's not my cup of tea. Repetition's not my cup of tea. But for some people, it seriously is. My sister's very good at that. And she loves retail, and she's owned several retail businesses and done been very well with it. But it's not for me. So I think first you have to know who you are before you can be successful with anything. You can't just jump out on anything. You have to know you. And the more passion you have, the more love you have for what you're doing, the more capable you're going to be successful with it, because you're going to be entertained by it. First of all, it's a joy for you to participate in it.
So the fear can cripple you and immobilize you. But like you said, you must know what you're passionate about and what your gifts are. Does that make it easier?
By far, because that will motivate you. Your emotions are motivating engines. And if you can get in touch with what your passion is about, then that will keep you sustained. If you can hang in there with it long enough for it to turn over and be a real success story. But you have to be observant and aware, and that's where your intuition can really come in handy. Because sometimes when things go completely wrong, it's a really good idea to check in with your intuition and see what happened. What exactly happened here? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? For me, knowing my personality, I can be fairly impatient. And sometimes I'm not willing to put in the time for something. I want it to happen now. So then I start just like forcing. Well, that never creates anything. Timing is a vitally important thing with any success story. I always say, my husband and I spent 10 years as paupers because we were investing and putting everything back into things. We got everything paid off. So, but we didn't have the luxury of, a lot of nice vacations, super nice cars, the big house. We didn't have those things for 10 years because we were setting a goal with something less. But the thing is that paid off. That patience paid off, because once it turned over, then it was really set to really skyrocket and do extremely well. So it's that sort of thing that people often, they want their reward now.
Yes.
Often when people are learning intuition, they want to see it now. It's like, well, I spent a lot of years doing the focus exercises, testing my intuition every day of the week, being able to see back, present, and forward with my intuition, being able to remote view things outside of my immediate environment. I spent every day doing those exercises. To me, that was fun. It was actually just a rewarding experience to say, yes, I got it. That was just a fun thing. But doing that every day with just small things, then when the big things come along, you can trust it, because you've seen that every day of your life for the last 3 years.
But that's very optimistic. Now, I think I find that people just, why bother, have that attitude? Why bother? This is my path. I'm not going to do anything. I don't know what I'm good at, and feel so defeated. Can you help someone turn that around?
Well, I don't know that I personally can. You always try to inspire people, but I think the want to change happens inside of you, and you have to want to change before you will change. And I think going even deeper, though, is why do you not want good things in your life? Sometimes it's a comfort zone where you are. It just feels okay. Even if you're miserable, it's still a comfort zone that if I get out of this, my gosh, who am I going to be? You feel vulnerable. You feel vulnerable without all these bad things happening to you that you can grumble about every day, And a lot of people want to stay there, and that's their option. It's not for me to pull them out of there and force them to have any other type of life if they don't want that. I'm here to inspire and to tell you can, and that it's very, very possible, and that your intuition can be a guiding force for you, and you can turn your life into something more of what you want. I always suggest starting small, where if you see successes, then you begin to realize, oh, this isn't kidding around. I really can manifest some things that are really, really great. I remember one time, there again, we were real estate investors. So we had been really thinking about, we weren't really financially ready to have a second home yet, but we were thinking about buying a lake house. Now, I didn't think we would ever find a lake house we could afford. So it didn't really matter, that we went and looked at lake houses a lot. It was a reason to be at the lake. It was just fun. It's what we did for a living anyway, was look at property. And we liked doing that. So we were always thinking about it, so we were set in motion this idea that we wanted a lake house, and we found one. We found one that was part of an estate. Owners didn't even live close. They just wanted to sell it, be gone with it. It was one of those things that you could buy it for a penny, kind of thing. Needed just a tiny bit of work, but not much. And we didn't have any problem with that. We could see beyond a little rustic things and some cosmetic things that needed to be done. And so we made an offer, but I was really nervous because I didn't really feel confident that we were prepared to have, the second property to manage, maintain, pay the payment on, all that sort of thing. But they took the offer that we made, even though it was pennies. They took the offer, and now I'm panicking, right? Because it's like, oh my, now I've got to be responsible for what I've done. I wanted a lake house. We found a lake house. We've offered. They took it. Oh no, now I'm going to own a lake house, and I'm not sure I'm ready for this. But my panic even just kind of started setting some things in motion, I think, because it ended up, there was a glitch in the title because it was an inherited property, and there were some complications with some various things. So they really didn't have clear title to be able to sell to us. So we didn't have to buy the property, and we didn't buy the property. But it was one of those moments where I realized, don't set something in motion faster than your willingness to accept the responsibility for what you're doing. You want to start a business? Well, you have to be prepared with all the time it's going to take, all of the money it's going to take, all the knowledge that you might have to understand what it's like to jump from having solid employment over to being self-employed. Now, I've been self-employed since the 80s, and it was a jump. Granted, not having that solid income was a jump. But we always have the optimism that we could create, that we could find what we needed, and we could always go back to getting a job. I remember at one point I had a position. My husband was a computer programmer at that time, and We had an independent company. He was working on doing some, it was a sellable program package for a certain industry, a certain business industry, but you don't get paid when you're developing that. So I had taken a job as a property management company with some commercial developments that were coming along that I was working with, leasing those and managing the overseeing of the development. And it wasn't a bad job, but it really was time consuming and it was exhausting. I was working 12, 15-hour days sometimes. It was just a very exhausting job. But I was doing that because we just needed that income during that period of time. And so I was not a happy camper. I wanted to leave that position. My husband kept saying, we'll figure out a way, and we always did. That's optimism in and of itself. But I wanted to buy a house. I didn't want to rent a house. They were providing a property for me in one of the new subdivisions. So I wanted to buy a house. If we moved out of that, if I gave notice, we needed to find someplace else to live. I wanted to buy. There was a certain area of town I wanted to buy in. The house had to have this special criteria that I wanted. It didn't have to be real fancy, but it did need to have these barriers around it. That was something that I really wanted. So I gave my notice. We had 2 weeks to find some place and move in. Now that's a really short span of time to find a house, close the house, and neither one of us had jobs. If I left this job and he was doing this thing, we didn't have jobs. We weren't going to qualify for any sort of a bank loan. There wasn't any way we were going to qualify for a bank loan. So he starts looking at the paper. There was a for sale by owner. It was in the area that I said I couldn't even get off work to go look at it. He went and looked at the house and he says, I think this will work for us. Yeah, the carpet needs to be pulled, new carpet put down, some paint on the walls, but otherwise it has everything that you're asking for in a property. So, and on top of this, the man was willing to owner finance. He was willing to do it with only $2,000 down payment, and we could close within a week and get into that house within 2 weeks. Now that was just like a miracle, but it happened. And we were in the house in 2 weeks. It was just like, okay, we don't have the obstacles in front of us were tremendous. You don't have jobs, you only have 2,000 down. You've got to find owner finance. It's got to be in a certain area with this certain criteria of the house. And we got it within 2 weeks. Now that's optimism. And that's also letting down those barriers of thinking you can't. You can, you always can. It's always out there, but you can't look at life as I can't, because those opportunities will never be experienced and you'll never take the risk. And we made every payment. We were very good with that. We've always figured out a way to manage all of our finances. We've never been late with the payments ever, So it was one of those things we knew we would be okay. We would be safe. Even with that risk, we knew we would be safe. There's something intuitively, we just knew that we were going to be okay. And that's the kind of optimism that most people don't possess. I have that. I got that. I understand that. They probably wouldn't jump out and just buy a house without jobs or even the man didn't even question that we had a job or didn't have a job. He just financed it and we went on. But, it's one of those things that teaching people that isn't so much teaching them, but leading by example of how it can happen. You have to hold a certain energy inside of you that allows you to step out of those limitations and say anything is possible. And anything is possible if you can just find the way to do that.
Yes. So intuition and optimism, kind of the same thing, Linda?
Not necessarily, because intuition can be warnings. Most people actually get it as a warning for something more often than they get it towards something good in their life, honestly. For me, it's always kind of worked more for the optimistic part rather than warnings. However, I did get, since I was a real estate investor, before the real estate crash in 2007, 2008, it was around 2004, 3 or 4, that I remember exactly where I was. Again, it was a download, a very specific download that says sell all your properties. And it's like, what? It's like, this is my bread and butter. We've worked so hard to gain all of these properties. Why on earth would I sell them? But by 2005, I owned nothing, not one single thing. And when that crash happened, I lost zero money. 2009, 2010, started reinvesting and built back, tripled my wealth at that point. So yeah, sometimes it's a warning, even when it makes no sense. There was no logic behind this whatsoever. Now, I owned several properties in 2000, around 2000, I think I was asking this question, probably around 2018. And it said by 2024, you need to start unloading those. And I'm down now to just a bare minimum of properties. I think the reason was more because of weather patterns. Where I live, there's a lot of tornadic weathers, floodings happening now. A lot of properties are in jeopardy because of that. Insurances are skyrocketing. Taxes are doing weird things these days. There's just a lot more expense to owning the property now than it was in years past. So I think I could see all of that was coming down the line, and to just be prepared by having fewer properties that I own.
So you have a superpower.
That's what I teach. That's what the spy book is. It's superhuman intuition.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell people. Or, you can move into that. You have to do the practice, though. You have to use it. It's like being a pro at golf or any other kind of skill that you might have. You can't just expect to do that if you're not doing it every day.
And the practice, Linda, do you have it like, okay, you got to start here, go here, next. Do you have it all kind of mapped out, the practice? So, once I get the first step done pretty good, then I proceed to the next step.
It's about a 2-year class. I mean, you can take longer than that, but it's about a 2-year class program. And by the time you get to the end of that, your brain is completely rewired. You're thinking differently. You're using different parts of yourself. I mean, it's a whole human development program. And also it kind of gets you out of, we kind of have this preconceived idea, I know I have, of what success looks like. And it doesn't have to fit that mold. I mean, success could be, you want to have a part-time job and live on a goat farm. I don't know what your idea of success is, but it doesn't have to be the model from everyone else. You need to know you enough to know what's going to make you happy. And if you can't be happier through this process of what you're manifesting, creating, then don't do it. Because that's the goal, is for you to have a better life.
Happiness. Do you think we're born intuitive and born happy, and so the negativity and all the things happen through the span of life?
I think a lot of it has to do with our early upbringing. If you have optimistic people around you, you're going to it's easier to develop an optimistic attitude. And if you see people overcome obstacles easily and have success stories around you, it might be easier for you to do that. I'm not sure, but it does seem to be that way. You're kind of programmed. The subconscious is programmed to view life in a certain way. And you do that through, your life, your community, your school, your church, whatever, kind of teaches you how to view the world. And, I had fairly optimistic parents. What I had were parents that had come out of the Depression and made a halfway success of their life. They did the most with what they had. And they were always good survivors. But the thing they did is they never poo-pooed any idea I had. They allowed me to be me and to create as I wanted to create. Now, there were rules, definitely, restrictive rules on behavior and morality and ethics and things like that, good teachings, but they always allowed my creative spirit to just exist. And I think that had a bearing on how I turned out.
Yeah, I agree. Linda, do you ever go action reaction if somebody is being extremely rude and unnecessary and inconsiderate? Will you find yourself going down that path a little bit, or are you always able to keep it circled around to where I can't invite that in?
I react. I mean, I'm just human. I react absolutely, and it's going to take me into that, anger to anger, kind of mode. And you have to get out of that, of course, at some point, and raise what I call raising the vibration up into something that's more, acceptable. And your expectations of yourself as well. But one thing I do know, because I think we communicate telepathically with each other all the time, I think this has a huge bearing on the way things turned out as well. I know, only threatened of a lawsuit a couple of times, but I remember this one time, and I just started sending this positive energy toward that, and it just resolved itself. You don't know for sure if that has any bearing on it. But according to a lot of people that are more well versed in this than myself, they've had scientific, rigorous, experimentation that does show that there is some validity to that. That how we are responding, other people will react to us. So I think we can resolve most things peacefully if we can just get into a state that's peaceful within ourselves.
That's big though. Sometimes, sometimes you can't put them, you can't, yeah, you circle the drain right with them. If they're hateful, you're going to be hateful right back. So it takes a true moment to step back. The people, well, you're more in an investment side of real estate, but if you were selling it and you were dealing with a particular customer, and this customer was very difficult, would you just say, okay, I can't swing this around. This is not for me. Will you remove yourself from situations that are tenuous like that?
If it's someone that, because I have rental properties now, but I have bought and sold. We owned a real estate company and we bought, sold, and not so much traditionally. We mostly worked with investors and things like that. But certainly there are situations where you can't have a meeting of the minds. I think I'm very objective with the business side of things most of the time, so I don't get too emotionally invested in that. If it's a situation, I try to just, do things right and legally and ethically. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't, and just let go of that. It's more on a personal level, when you have people that you have some differences of ideas. And of course, with everything, the divided country we live in right now, there's a lot of that, where I have a lot of friends that, the meeting of the minds and just conversation can sometimes go down a really difficult path. And that has been disheartening to me, to just not be able to have that sense of closeness with people. So it's more, I can see myself being in disappointment than I am in anger necessarily about it. But, that's a growing moment, and you can take it as a growing process and try to rise above that, find some common ground with people. But when it's a sharp wording from a sales clerk or something like that, and went out of line, something that can be the trick, because what's the relationship here that's going to motivate you to smooth this over and make it correct or right? And the only motivation where that's going to come from is who you want to be, who the person is that you want to be inside. And that I found to be the most motivating factor for me, but I had to learn how to do that as well. I want to be a better person than this and be able to deal with this rationally and be able to deal with this well. Also, another way that intuition can come into play here is to go into your intuitive state and just look at the situation from a broader picture, or even from their point of view. And if you can do that, it changes everything, because then, oh, I see, this wasn't what I thought it was. This was something maybe completely different than how I was interpreting all of this. Or maybe that person was just going through a really hard time. You just never know.
And yes, that's very fair. But to have the ability to step back in that moment can be hard. Those people, so often they can be triggering, and mm-hmm. and not to say, but maybe you're having the bad day,
yes.
So it's just, it is it's learned, like you're saying. You have practiced this and learned and learned and learned, and still to this day you're learning, and you still lean into things. So you embrace the fear almost.
Well, what I think I do is for me, it was like coping skills, that this allowed me to go through my life at a place inside of me that had a higher understanding than just my ability to deal with this on a conscious level. It not only was an optimistic business endeavor and optimistic just in curiosity. I had a fascination with, what was possible with this, and just kind of worked it to the hilt. But I think also the rest of it, dealing with the emotional side of it, is just coping skills. And what I found was my intuition gave me a tremendous ability to separate myself from the initial emotional tug and pool war that might be going on just on an elementary, almost childlike basis between people, rise above that and be able to see something outside of that picture. And that was just a really wonderful way, because I was deep into self-awareness initially whenever I started this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you've made me think. Yes, it's so thought provoking, and I need to get in touch because I'm getting to the point where if they're being rude, then well, I'm going to be rude too, that's not, two wrongs don't make a right. You know what I mean? And yeah, I have to find, and I like what you said earlier, just try to step back and see what kind of, maybe they're having a bad day and give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think also, having done a lot of exercises with just energy, body energy and things, and understanding that if you can kind of get into your heart space and open up compassion, a lot of that just dissolves. It just goes away. So I know I took care of my parents between 2013 to 2018. It was about a 5-year process. My mom had a stroke and they were in their 90s. So, there was a lot of need. They wanted to stay on their farm, took 24/7 care. I invested in quite a few properties to be able to pay for their care. So I was managing properties, managing their finances, managing all the overseeing help that we had 24/7. And it was a lot on my plate. I mean, and basically my life stopped, for the most part, because it was just busy, 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 busy taking care of them. And I recognized, it's like, whoa, I could fall into resentment so easy here, and did on occasion, because there was no rest, there was no life, it was all consuming. But what I would do, and this always worked, and I always recommend it for people, if I could just get back into my heart space with compassion for them, understanding that their position right now was absolutely out of their control, and I was the one that could come in and make their life easier, that can make them happier. They had lost their autonomy pretty much. They had lost their ability, to just go for a drive. So every week I would try to, get them out of the house and go for a drive, just so they could see, the countryside and not feel so hampered, just stuck in the home. I would make sure their foods that they liked were brought to the house, and that the aides knew how to deal with the diet and the things that they like to eat, and then to just sit and have conversation with them. But as long as I could stay in my heart with compassion for them and with a higher sense of love for them, I was okay. I didn't have resentment anymore. And that's true of everything. Now, I was motivated because this was a long haul situation, and these were my parents. So it was easier for me to do it than maybe it would be for the sales clerk that just pisses me off one day.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Everything you've told me today, I am going to practice. I swear I'm going to practice, because I find myself having some personal contempts. Mm-hmm. And I am going to practice this. I am going to look at that person differently and not let them consume me and my energy.
I think that's wise. I think that's really good advice for anyone to be able to recognize that they don't have to own you. Those more elementary emotional states that we have, and there's just reactive. Another thing that helped me along the way to just that self growth that I had was I would realize that if I was upset about something, there was a different end result I was really looking for, rather than just to be angry isn't in and of itself doesn't accomplish much. But if I could just go in and figure out what is it I really want here that I'm not getting, that's making me angry, and start working for a solution to get that, then it's like a lot of that just goes away, because you realize that it's a lot of misspent energy that doesn't get you anything.
Right. But I have, a lot of friends, Linda, that are very kind of, I don't know, their life is very status quo, and I'm very restless, and I guess we don't share the same headspace anymore. Yeah. But I'm going to be a little more compassionate with them, I guess.
Yeah, and also recognizing that you may need to make some new friends that are more in the same alignment of what your mindset is. We don't have to have exclusive friends. We can have more friends that fit the bill of what we're looking for. And this is true all of our lives. We change, they change, yes. and we sometimes just need people. I like intelligent conversation, so I'm always looking for people that have interests that maybe I don't even know about that subject, but I learn from them. So I always like to be with people who are far more intelligent than me, that have experiences that I haven't had, because I have that adventure with them of being able to learn from them.
Now, do you have one sounding board, Linda, one friend that you can call in the middle of the night? You're stranded on the side of the road. Do you have that one friend you've been dragging around forever? I say
No,
that keenly.
I have some really close friends, but I wouldn't know that I would call them in the middle of the night. What I have is that I tend to be people's sounding board. That's what I'm
You're the
sounding for everyone. It's like, oh, how do I deal with this? What do you see intuitively about this for me? I tend to be everyone's intuitive sounding board, at least.
Right. So you got nobody that you can just go. That's a little bit of my resentment too, with my friends, is that I have no one that because they all call me, like you said, but I have no one that I can personally go to, and I don't know if I would go and share anyhow. So what do I want? I mean, geez, I expect, then I don't. Then when you ask me, it's like, oh, I'm fine. So what do I expect actually? But this has certainly been a learning and experience for me. I'm captivated, and I'm going to put some of this in motion, because I work in an industry that's very, very stressful and can be very ugly. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this.
Yes.
Wow. And I'm going to be more in tune. I didn't realize you think learning is just with your brain, I mean, and that's all there is to it. And you think your gut, well, you've had those gut feelings, but I'm gonna turn this around.
I think you can.
Swing it back, and I will have an opportunity, because I'm telling you, Linda, I deal with some really angry people all the time, and I'm going to try and get in their headspace.
Yeah, and also sometimes we can act as the calming agent for them, to help smooth that over.
I don't think they deserve that calming agent. So is that another challenge too, if they're deserving of it? I mean, some people are just are they naturally hateful?
Yeah, I think some people just naturally exhibit that kind of personality. It's the way they have learned to maneuver the world. They may be bullies, or that's how they get their way, or they just may be disgruntled people and they just take it out on everyone around them. I mean, I'm around those people too. I understand that can be very disheartening if you're in that day in, day out, for certain. It's hard to continually have that pushed upon you. One of the things I've been very lucky with is, because I have been self-employed for most of my life, I don't have to be around very many people. I deal with a lot of people's hardships because I do the intuitive work, and people that are in really bad states, usually that's when I'm going to get the call and have to work them through that. Whether they're angry or not, that they can be angry about a situation, but we're looking for solutions to that situation. So I don't know what your business is, and I don't know how you have to deal with these people, but they're angry for a reason. And if they can get what they want and some resolution that's peaceful, then usually the anger goes away.
Do you feel, Linda, society has become very entitled?
In some ways, I think we've become a very self-absorbed society, more and more so, kind of every day. But at the same time, I see people every day. I just wrote about this the other day. There was a young man. I think the younger generation kind of gets really put down sometimes for their self-centeredness. But there was a young man that was walking up to an office building, and there was a man there in a wheelchair trying to get the door open. And sometimes that's complicated, in a wheelchair. The young man just didn't even hesitate for a second, just walked in and said, "Here, let me get that for you." Open the door, let the man go through. And I'm thinking, there's a lot of goodness out there, probably more goodness than the bad, but the bad kind of sticks with us, kind of like a claw in our gut. It just, we don't like it, and it sticks with us. It's a memory that sits there. There are a lot of people out there just doing really good acts of kindness all over the place.
Yeah, you're right. We're just not paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
We're not paying attention. My cousin told me one time, if you used to piss me off, you hold the door open for someone and they go through and they don't say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, if you expect a thank you, then don't hold the door open.
That's that resentment. If you do it in resented. This is another thing that I came to terms with a long time ago. It's like, if I'm going to resent it, then don't do it at all. Don't do
Exactly.
it at all. I don't ever expect anything in return, because the thing that you can always give yourself is, be pleased with who you are. And if holding the door pleases you because you know you did it in with good intentions, then that's your reward. If you get a thank you on top of that, that's icing on the cake.
Right. I mean, but that was real eye-opening for me. I thought, well, that's so true. I mean, really didn't hold the door for a thank you, but I expected it for some reason, because that's what I thought you did. But yeah. But this has been wonderful. You've been delightful. I mean, really eye-opening. You have humbled me, Linda. I mean, yeah. So whoever starts feeling themselves and thinking there's something, they need to put them feet back on the ground.
Well, I can tell you, learning this whole process, teaching the whole process, it was an immensely humbling experience, because I really had to just get that ego out of the way and just be with me and accept my flaws, accept, my desires, accept that it was my responsibility to do these things, and to not blame the world, but it was very humbling. And there was a lot of real shifting moments along the way to be able to get to that state, for sure.
Do you journal, Linda? Do you write it down and go, today I could have done better? Or, I mean, do you write your thoughts down? Do you think that's important?
Yeah, that's a big part of the courses that I teach, because it's one of the ways we can keep record of our improvement, for one thing. Because we can go back, 6 months ago, where was my mindset at that time, and how have I improved now? So I think it's really important to journal. Also, it forces you to slow your thoughts down and be very aware of your day's activities, what you accomplished that day, what your attitude was that day. And we can begin to see how it's a bigger picture than just this. Cause and effect doesn't happen within, this to that. It's a larger picture than that. And I also talk about, past, present, future are interconnected. It's a stream of energy that goes from one to the other. And as our life breaks down how we have been, it's going to transfer over into how we want to be. And so you have to have a bigger picture, and journaling can help accomplish that, for sure.
I mean, I think it's a real gift to be alone with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's vital.
And a lot of people can't do that.
Right.
So I think that's a real gift, to be able to not to, go anywhere, to just be in that moment alone with yourself.
Yes.
In the silence.
It's about the only way you can get to know yourself, really.
But knowing yourself, you have to be completely honest.
Yeah.
You don't get to fudge anything.
Right.
So, all right, Linda. Well, in conclusion, let's close this up. Give me something very profound here. Not that this whole conversation hasn't been very profound.
Well, kind of on the note that what you said, I really do think that you can't own your life until you know yourself. And knowing yourself is key. It's absolutely key to moving forward with anything. And I think we touched on this earlier. We're in these boxes of limitations. If you want to be out of that box, get to know who you are and start creating from that perspective.
Yeah, I like that. That's and that's simply put, know yourself, and then you can manage differently.
Yes. It's no one else's expectations. It's not your parents. It's not your church. It's not your school, your educational background. None of that matters as much as what do you think? What do you want?
Right. And how do you stop being so hard on yourself?
Oh, self-forgiveness. Yes, that's a tough one too. But the same thing I talked about when I was taking care of my parents, getting into that heart space of compassion. That compassion can go toward yourself just as much as it can toward outside to others. So as long as you can live from a sense of self-love, you start making decisions for yourself that are better. But you have to really see that what you're doing that harms you and what you're doing that helps you. And when you have self-love, you'll choose more often to do the things that actually do enhance your life and help you.
Okay. Well, Linda, thank you very much. I mean, you have really been thought-provoking, and you've humbled me, and I'm going to work on myself. I really am. So Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Will you do this again with me sometime?
Absolutely, yes. Be happy to.
Oh, great. That's good to know because I'll be tapping on your door all the time. You'll be my sounding board now.
I'd be happy to do so.
All right. Thank you, Linda. Let's say goodbye.